Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Sherlock, founder of Sketchbro Studios, and your host at Business Mastery Show. It's a show with business ideals and their strategies. And today we're joined by Ben Pritchett. He is an author of an Amazon bestseller named Systemize It Now. He is a business coach, consultant, a guru as I know him, but best of all, I call him a walking library. Well, Ben, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Sherlock. Great to be here.
Thanks, man. I don't mean to be taking much of your time, so I'll go through my questions rather quickly. Why don't you get started by giving us a quick introduction of yourself? Please share with our audience who you are and what you do.
Sure, no problem. Well, Ben Pritchett is my name, originally from Newfoundland here in Canada. Shifted to the center of the country about 17 years ago. I'm out in Manitoba now. But I've been an interesting, led an interesting life, I guess, in business. I've been a business coach or consultant, whatever. I kind of use those two terms interchangeably for since I was 20 years old, as a matter of fact. So I'm approaching 29 years this July that I've been at this. And that's a little young for most people to start at it. But, I guess it's interesting we're having this talk right now while we're all locked down for good old COVID-19. But I graduated college back in 1991, and for anybody, I guess, who's not familiar, that was a year after they shut the fishery down in Newfoundland. So basically, in the same way that we're all shut down right now because of a damn pandemic, we were shut down then. I mean, not that I ever had any plans to be a fisherman, but as you can imagine, at the time in Newfoundland, it was the industry. And in my little town of Gander, again, we were known as the airport town, but we serviced almost 80,000 people who were mainly in fishing communities. So when I graduated college, there were no jobs to be had. And unlike a lot of folks who packed up and moved to Alberta and got a job in the oil industry, I had a couple of sick family members that I wasn't able to move because I had them to take care of. So I kind of sat down and anyone who's familiar with Peter Drucker, who was a very famous management consultant, he talked about when you're looking for a business opportunity, he said you look for incongruity. And what he means by incongruity is look for something that should be there but isn't. For example, I guess if you live in a town and there's no barber, maybe there's an opportunity to cut hair. Well, in my case, I kind of looked around and I said, what do I know how to do that the average person doesn't? And the main focus of my college program I did was called Small Business Entrepreneurship. And to graduate that program, you had to write a business plan. I said, well, I know how to write a business plan. Most people don't. And at the time, the only people doing it were accountants, really, in my neck of the woods. And, one of the funny things about accountants, of course, is they think like accountants. That's what they're trained to be. So, to an accountant, marketing is an expense. To an entrepreneur or businessy type person, marketing is an investment. So I said, you know what, I can write a different business plan than an accountant will write. So I hung my shingle out at the ripe old age of 20, and I had written my first business plan within a couple of months for a guy who was almost 50, which was kind of interesting when you're 20 and still wet behind the ears and right out of college. So so I wrote a business plan for a guy who's basically the same age I am now is how I started way back when. And since that time, of course, I've worked in, 20, 30 different industries, I guess. I've helped start companies for clients in about 60 odd companies in all sorts of different industries all over the place. Everything from, restaurants to computer software to the granite industry to hunting and fishing and tourism and you name it, all points in between. And then when I moved to Manitoba back in 2002, I married an optometrist, and I kind of joked then I married the industry. So in that length of time, we've owned and run as many as 5 different clinics. We've had a lab. We produced our own lenses for a time and this sort of thing, and we're still in that business today. We have 2 offices, and right now we have 4 doctors involved with our company. We do remote services to the Aboriginal community. And, we have, in a province of 1.3 million, we have almost 30,000 patients. So we've got, wow. We're fairly active in the industry. So that's a little bit of my background. I mean, I guess I don't think you have long enough to go into all of it here because
I know, but Thanks
But
so
yeah,
much for sharing that. Because actually, it was interesting that you mentioned the different industries you worked with, because it's very relevant to my next question. I know you. The first time I met you, I knew I we were introduced to each other and by Iman, I believe, and
yes.
I learned that you were a business coach. So from that moment, I was actually curious to know what exactly you're doing, and so I started to learn more about what you and other coaches and consultants do. And now that you mentioned different industries, it's the best time to ask a question I've been meaning to ask you for maybe 2 years. What is
Okay.
the hardest thing you ever had to do in your industry?
Oh my goodness. Well, as a coach,
Yeah.
uh, I think probably, I guess the most frustrating thing as a coach or a consultant for that matter, and I guess just as a quick clarification, the quick and dirty definition difference: when you're a consultant, you do stuff for people, they pay you to do it for them. A coach is paid to tell them how to do it. And the problem why I use the two interchangeably is you very rarely do 100% of either, because you oftentimes end up doing stuff for them when you should be telling them how to do it. Um, Probably the biggest and most frustrating thing, and certainly if you want to hear more about this, go talk to Iman sometime about it, is you tell them what to do and they don't bloody do it. So it's the classic story of you can lead the horse to water, you can't make them drink sort of thing. Uh, but that would be, as the coaching consulting side would be it. Um, as an entrepreneur would be, I mean, having owned multiple businesses, I think I've probably owned 15 or 6 businesses myself over the years. It's having a business fail. Even when you've like the last big economic downturn in 2008, I owned a business brokerage at the time, and it was probably the worst time in the world to own a business brokerage because you couldn't finance anything. You could have the best business in the world, and if you can't get the buyer can't borrow money to buy it, you have no business. So that was one of my less than stellar businesses that I owned that failed, and another bad one. I mean, was partnerships. We had a business partnership in our optical industry one time, with another doctor who I don't think he was even on purpose on his part. I think he had a bit of a mental breakdown. He couldn't. He just wasn't cut out to be an entrepreneur, and he basically froze up, and we ended up. That led to a whole domino effect of things where at one point we just about lost all of our business because of a terrible partnership scenario. So, anyone that's been around like I have, I mean, I started my first business when I was 15, which if I don't know if you've ever gone salmon fishing or fly fishing, I actually made salmon flies, which was just when I was a teenager. I would make them in the winter. No driver's license or anything. I had to get my mom to drive me around all the little convenience stores in the spring, and I'd sell the things. So to some degree or another, I've been self-employed for, geez, was that 34 years?
Wow.
And in all that length of time, I mean, first of all, surviving that long, self-employed is not easy. And anyone who says they haven't had a failure in that length of time is lying, or they got to be the luckiest person on earth. Get them to pick your lottery numbers for you. So yeah. I mean, I think that the toughest thing on the coaching consulting side is definitely knowing what needs to be done, but you can't convince your client to do it.
Definitely.
And on the general entrepreneur side is doing something you're passionate about and that you believe in, and for whatever reason failing at it.
Now, considering that the main audience of our show are people who want to start business in the form of an entrepreneur, a startup company, or things of similar matter. You as an experienced person, I'm sure you know a lot. You have done a lot of things. You have gone through many stages that people like me or new entrepreneurs are going to go through. So let me put my question better. If you could give one advice to people like me who are at the beginning of the road, people who want to start a career, to start to build a business for themselves, what would it be?
That's an interesting question. I mean, the biggest one is, we have a bit of a joke saying I guess in the Western world there about Murphy's Law. And are you familiar with that one?
Yes, sir.
Well, there are multiple Murphy's Laws. Actually, the most common one, of course, is everything takes twice as long as you expect and it costs 3 times as much. Now, the lesser known one is O'Toole's corollary, which is that Murphy was an optimist. So that's, all joking aside, you can't go into business without planning for it. You can never plan for all the eventualities. Like nobody, well, except for maybe one or two conspiracy nuts, could have planned for what's going on in the economy today. You just cannot plan for this no matter what you do. But one big thing I would say is, number one, have a plan. And a business plan is a living document. Do not have a business plan just to get a bank loan. Have one that you refer to, that you update, you go through all the time. Have the plan in place, because if you haven't got a plan and something goes sideways, what are you going to do? Because I've been in business for a long time, I have a lot of friends who are also in business, other coaches, consultants, business owners. So I've often referred to it almost as a de facto board of directors. I have people I can go to when I'm looking for advice. Have that. There are certain things you never cut back in tough times like now, and this may seem self-serving, but one of those would be a business coach or consultant, because they're an independent third party. They can tell you the hard things you need to know. They can give you advice. You don't go out and turf your accountant because you can do your taxes on TurboTax. You want to make sure you've got a good group of advisors. Maybe you got to negotiate with them on price a little bit. I mean, I'm certainly in a time like this, if I had a regular coaching client that came to me and said, "Hey, Ben, look, I can't afford your fee this month, but, I don't want you to dump me," sort of thing, we'd work something out, because, that's all about being, one of the big words we're hearing right now is the ability to pivot. And that's something that, small businesses have to be. They have to be nimble, sort of thing, because, large corporations can't change and do things as quickly as a small one can.
Absolutely.
So have a plan, but be willing to change that plan. The statistics on startup businesses are abysmal. I mean, it's basically only 1 in 10 survives 10 years. So you consider that I'm into my 4th decade in business now. So you can imagine how many businesses I've seen fail in the time that I've been at it. And as I said, I've had several of my own fail, but it fails, you move on. And one of the things is, to me, always learn. And you can learn in 2 ways. You learn positive lessons, but you also learn negative lessons. So no matter what happens to you in business, learn and take something from it. Like, one of the big things I think we're all going to take from this COVID thing is, you've got to have better cash reserves. You've got to have better lines of credit, and so on and so forth, so that if something like this happens, you're better able to withstand it, right?
Absolutely.
One of the things that I think is going to come out of this, they say that we form new habits in roughly 21 days of doing something. So if you're a normal retailer today, if you're a mom and pop storefront business, I read just 2 nights ago, Amazon hired 100,000 new staff last month, and they're hiring 75,000 this month. Now that's a shocking number when you think about it. If you live in a province that I live in with less than 1.5 million people, they're hiring the equivalent of 10% of the population of this province.
That is a lot.
In 2 months. So if you're in HR right now, you're a pretty busy person, I would suspect, if you're in HR at Amazon. Here's the thing, though. What does that tell you? That tells you that online ordering is going stupidly crazy. That people are ordering right, left, and center from the internet. If this lockdown goes on for six weeks or 8 weeks or 10 weeks or something, whatever this ends up being, if 21 days forms a habit, what does 42 days or 84 days form? So if you've got a mom and pop type business, how do you get that business back? If the person that used to come into your shop, for example, to buy coffee, has now been buying it for 6 or 8 weeks online, can you get that business back? How do you get it back? And you see some of the big restaurant chains have done this. I mean, people who you normally went to drive through, you see and I don't know where most of your people are going to listen to this, so I'll use a Canadian example. I mean, Tim Hortons. Tim Hortons is offering free delivery. Well, most people, if you will go out in Canada, and I'm sure if we have American friends on here, just think Dunkin' Donuts, same thing. You know, you see people lined up around the building to get coffee. Well, if they're now used to getting the coffee delivered to their house, does that change? How do you find a way to coax people back to it, sort of thing? So if habits change, how do you get them back? So again, it's all about pivoting, being nimble. How do you do things differently? I think would be a huge lesson going forward. I've probably strayed from your original question there, but I think that's
it's very to the point. Thank you so much. It makes a lot of sense because these are very hard times for everyone, and a lot of people have really struggled coping with the conditions that they are in, especially small business owners. So your advice was actually gold. Thank you so much. Ben, I don't mean to be taking much of your time. So before we bring it to an end, please tell us what's happening in your life, what's happening in your business, what do you have baking in the oven?
Well, for us, there's 2 or 3 things, I guess. One of my big things I've had for years, I have a website that actually offers a 52-week marketing training. You know, one of the biggest things that many of us do in the consulting field or in the education field is we drown people in information when the time comes. So, you know, many years ago, there used to be a saying, Dan Kennedy used to be famous for it. He said, you know, when you sold an online training program or more of an information product, you wanted to get the thud factor. And the thud factor was when the box landed on the dining room table. Well, here's the problem, though. The thud is people got overwhelmed. So yeah, they unpacked it, they looked at it and said, holy crap, there's, you know, a 6-inch binder here full of stuff and there's 27 DVDs or whatever. I don't have the time for all that. So it got stuck on the shelf and never got looked at. So one of the things that the companies I'm involved with have done is they took marketing training and they chopped it up into 52 weekly snippets. So instead of getting overwhelmed with something you can't handle, it's one weekly lesson. We have done for you, which is, you know, we go in and help. We have done with you, where you've got the training along with us helping out, or for the people who are really on a budget, which a lot of folks are nowadays, of course, we've got this program that people can get dripped on, 1 lesson a week, something that can be done in an hour or 2. You got workbooks and all sorts of things. You know, I do one-on-one coaching as well, but obviously, you know, there's only so many hours in a week. I'm already running businesses. Well, in normal circumstances, I'm running businesses. So, you know, I only take on 2 or 3 clients generally at a time because that's all the time that I have. So it's really got to be a business that piques my interest to go do it. But certainly if anybody wants to shoot me an email nowadays, and I don't know if you'll be able to pop my email address up on there, it's just, Ben at benjpritchett.com. They can shoot me an email. I would certainly at this point I make them a very special offer on that 52-week training. And if it's someone who's really looking to get a deep dive and wants to work one-on-one, I'd be able to do something as well. You know, just stick in the subject line, you know, Sherlock sent me or something like that, because I do get about 300 emails a day. So occasionally stuff slips through the cracks. By all means, shoot me an email. I'd be happy to make them an offer and get that training to them.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ben. So guys, you will get all the links in the bio or in the comment section. Please look out for that. If you are a person who has recently started a business or thinking of starting a business, or in any shape or form you want to take on a role as an entrepreneur in your world, this is a person to follow. Ben, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
No problem, Sherlock. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.